The morning began quietly, the kind of quiet that only comes with heavy snow. When I opened the wooden window of the old house in northern Iran, the world outside was completely white. Thick snow covered the rooftops, the narrow village paths, and the bare branches of the trees that stood like silent guardians around the house. The air was cold and clean, and every breath felt fresh, sharp, and alive. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crowed, its voice muffled by the snow, as if even sound was moving slowly today. This was not a rushed morning. This was a day meant to be lived gently. The house itself felt warm despite the cold outside. The walls were thick, built long ago to protect against winters like this. The smell of burning wood drifted through the rooms, coming from the old stove in the corner. The floor creaked softly under my feet as I walked toward the kitchen. Everything felt familiar, comforting, and deeply rooted in time. Snowy days here do not bring isolation, they bring people closer together. They slow life down and remind everyone to return to simple things. Grandma was already awake. She always was. Wrapped in her dark wool shawl, she sat near the window where the light was strongest, her hands busy with the work she had done her entire life. In front of her was a tall wooden butter churn, smooth from decades of use. She greeted me with a quiet smile, the kind that carries warmth without many words. Her eyes reflected the soft light bouncing off the snow outside, and for a moment, it felt like the entire day revolved around this peaceful scene. Butter churning is not something that can be rushed. Grandma poured fresh cream into the churn, cream that came from the family's cow, milked just a day before. She placed the lid on top and began moving the handle up and down in a steady rhythm. Thump, pause, thump. The sound blended with the crackling of the fire and the faint wind outside. She told me that butter tastes different when you make it yourself, especially in winter. The cold makes it richer, she said, more alive. As she worked, she shared stories, just as she always did. Stories of winters when the snow was even deeper, when roads disappeared for weeks and people depended entirely on each other. She spoke of her own grandmother, who taught her this very same method, using the same kind of churn. Nothing in this process had changed, and that was the beauty of it. Each movement of her hands felt like a continuation of history, passed quietly from one generation to the next. Outside, snow continued to fall, slow and steady. Large flakes drifted past the window, landing softly on the ground as if the earth itself was being carefully tucked in. The village looked like a painting, untouched and pure. No cars, no noise, just the occasional footprint of someone walking carefully through the snow. In moments like this, you understand why people here are so deeply connected to the land. Nature is not something separate, it is part of daily life. In the kitchen, preparations for the day's meals had already begun. On the low table sat bowls of rice soaking in water, turning soft and plump. Today, Grandma was making a sweet rice dish, one reserved for special days or cold winter mornings. The rice would be cooked slowly with sugar, butter, and rosewater, filling the house with a fragrance that felt like comfort itself. This was not just food, it was memory, warmth, and care, served in a bowl. Grandma stopped churning for a moment and checked the cream. She smiled, satisfied with its texture, then continued. After some time, the sound inside the churn changed. It became heavier, thicker. This was the moment she waited for. Soon, small clumps of butter began to form, separating from the buttermilk. She opened the churn and showed me, her hands gently lifting the fresh butter. Its pale yellow color looked almost golden against the dark wood. Fresh butter, made by hand, has a smell that cannot be explained. It is clean, rich, and deeply comforting. She washed the butter in cold water, shaping it carefully, pressing out the remaining liquid. Nothing was wasted. The leftover buttermilk would later be used for bread or shared with neighbors. In winter, sharing is not a choice, it is a way of life. You give because one day, you may need to receive. As the butter rested, Grandma moved to the stove to begin cooking the sweet rice. She drained the soaked rice and added it to a pot of simmering water. The steam rose gently, fogging the small kitchen windows. She stirred slowly, patiently, never leaving the pot unattended. Cooking here is done with intuition, not measurements. She added sugar by feel, a small pinch of salt for balance, and finally a spoonful of the freshly churned butter. The butter melted instantly, releasing a rich aroma that filled every corner of the house. The scent mixed with the smell of burning wood and snow-cold air sneaking in through the cracks. It was the smell of winter in northern Iran, a smell that stays with you long after you leave. Outside, the sky remained gray, but inside, everything felt golden and alive. Grandma added a few drops of rosewater, careful not to overpower the dish. She said sweetness should be gentle, never loud. While the rice cooked slowly, preparations began for baking bread. Not ordinary bread, but Tandoor Herbal bread, made especially on cold days. The herbs had been dried months ago, gathered from nearby hills during spring and summer. Now, in winter, they returned as flavor and medicine. Grandma mixed flour with warm water, salt, and yeast, kneading the dough with strong, experienced hands. The dough was soft and warm, alive under her fingers. She added the crushed herbs to the dough, and the smell instantly changed. Earthy, fresh, and slightly bitter, it reminded me of green fields hidden beneath the snow. The dough rested under a cloth near the stove, slowly rising. Patience is everything in this kitchen. Nothing is forced. Everything happens when it is ready. Outside, the wind picked up slightly, sending small swirls of snow across the courtyard. The old trees creaked gently, their branches heavy with white. Somewhere nearby, a neighbor laughed, the sound carrying softly through the cold air. Even in winter, life continues, quietly but steadily. When the dough was ready, Grandma prepared the tandoor. The clay oven had been heating for hours, its walls glowing softly from within. She shaped the dough into flat rounds and pressed them carefully, her movements confident and precise. One by one, she placed the bread inside the tandoor, the heat instantly transforming the dough. The smell of baking bread mixed with herbs filled the air, stronger than anything else. Standing there, watching her work, I realized how much of this knowledge lives only in hands and memory. There are no written instructions, no timers, no machines. Just experience, patience, and love. Every loaf told a story of seasons, land, and family. As the bread baked, the sweet rice reached its perfect texture. Soft, creamy, and lightly golden, it was ready. Grandma tasted it, nodded once, and removed it from the heat. The butter churned earlier now found its way into the dish, melting slowly on top, creating a glossy finish that promised warmth in every bite. The table was set simply. Fresh bread, sweet rice, and tea brewed strong and dark. Outside, snow continued to fall, but inside, the world felt complete. There was no rush to eat, no need to speak much. Just the quiet comfort of being together, sharing food made by hand, on a snowy day in northern Iran. By the time we finished eating, the snow outside had grown thicker. The sky seemed lower, pressing gently over the village, as if winter itself had decided to stay a little longer. The warmth from the food settled deep inside, spreading slowly, the way comfort always does on cold days. Grandma poured tea into small glasses, the steam rising in thin curls, carrying the familiar scent of black leaves and dried herbs. We sat quietly for a while, listening to the soft sounds of the house breathing, the fire cracking, the kettle humming, the wind brushing against the walls. After breakfast, the day unfolded without any plan. Snowy days here are not scheduled. They move at their own pace. Grandma wrapped her shawl tighter and stepped outside to check the courtyard. I followed, my boots sinking into the fresh snow with each step. The cold bit at my face, sharp but refreshing. The courtyard looked untouched, smooth like a blanket spread carefully overnight. The tandoor released a faint warmth even in the open air, its clay walls slowly cooling after hours of work. Grandma brushed snow off the wooden bench and sat for a moment, gazing at the white landscape. She said winter teaches patience. You cannot fight the snow, you must move with it. Roads close, plans change, and life becomes smaller, quieter, but also deeper. She pointed toward the hills in the distance, now barely visible through the falling snow, and said they were resting, just like the people. Inside again, the afternoon light faded early, as it always does in winter. The rooms grew dim, lit only by the fire and a small lamp hanging from the ceiling. Grandma began sorting dried herbs, separating them carefully. Each one had a purpose, for tea, for bread, for medicine. She told me which herb helped with colds, which warmed the body, which calmed the heart. In places like this, knowledge is not written in books, it lives in conversations, passed quietly over time. The snow continued its steady fall, building layer upon layer. From the window, I watched a neighbor walk by, wrapped in heavy clothing, carrying a bundle of firewood. They exchanged greetings without stopping, smiles brief but meaningful. Winter makes every interaction count. No one wastes energy, but no one forgets kindness either. As the afternoon deepened, Grandma prepared a small snack using leftover bread from the morning. She warmed it near the fire and spread a thin layer of the fresh butter on top. The butter melted instantly, soaking into the bread, releasing its rich scent once again. Sometimes, the simplest food tastes the best, especially when it comes from your own hands. She told more stories then, her voice calm and steady. Stories of past winters when electricity was rare and nights were lit only by oil lamps. She spoke of gathering around the fire, listening to elders talk, learning about life without realizing it. She said people today have many things but little time. Winter teaches you to slow down and notice what truly matters. Outside, the snow finally began to ease, the flakes growing smaller, lighter. The wind softened, and a deep silence settled over the village. It was the kind of silence that feels full rather than empty. The world seemed paused, holding its breath. As evening approached, the sky shifted from gray to soft blue, then slowly to deep purple. Grandma lit another lamp, its warm glow filling the room. Shadows danced gently on the walls, moving with the flicker of the flames. She began preparing a light dinner, nothing heavy, just enough to carry warmth into the night. Cooking in the evening is slower, quieter, as if the day itself is winding down. The sweet rice from the morning made another appearance, slightly thicker now, even more comforting. Grandma said food changes with time, just like people. Some things become richer when allowed to rest. She poured more tea, and we ate slowly, savoring each bite, each sip. Outside, smoke rose from chimneys across the village, thin lines against the darkening sky. Every house told the same story: fire inside, snow outside, families gathered close. In moments like this, distance disappears. Everyone is connected by the same cold, the same warmth, the same quiet understanding. Night arrived fully, bringing with it a deep stillness. The snow reflected the moonlight, making the world glow softly even in darkness. Grandma closed the wooden shutters and added more wood to the fire. The house felt like a shelter not just from the cold, but from the noise of the world beyond the mountains. Before sleeping, she placed the remaining butter in a cool corner, covering it carefully. Nothing is taken for granted here. Every effort is respected. She washed her hands slowly, deliberately, as if marking the end of the day's work. Lying down, wrapped in thick blankets, I listened to the wind one last time. It no longer felt harsh. It felt gentle, almost protective. The smells of bread, butter, and wood lingered in the air, blending into something deeply comforting. This was not just a snowy day. It was a lesson in simplicity, patience, and care. In northern Iran, winter does not isolate people. It brings them closer, to food made by hand, to stories told softly, to traditions that survive not because they are written down, but because they are lived every single day. Grandma's butter churning, the sweet rice, the Tandoor Herbal bread, these were not just tasks. They were expressions of love, memory, and belonging. As sleep slowly took over, the snow outside continued its quiet work, covering the land in white, preparing it for another season. And inside the old house, warmth remained, steady and reassuring, waiting for the morning to begin again.